recording for the next segment here. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. This is the segment of the day called Underground Theory Open House, meaning that I'm just encouraging participants, collaborators in Underground Theory to drop in. It looks like, Philip, you're dropping in from a bedroom. Nick, you're dropping in from a street in some city somewhere.
Yep. I'm in Philly, coming home from work.
Great to have you, man. Philip, how you doing?
Excellent. Been loving the marathon so far.
Yeah. You've been here for it, huh?
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, we've got a handful of people who are projected to be here at some point. And I think it's just going to be kind of a sort of free-for-all kind of open discussion. Oh, shit. People. I'm so sorry. It's cut off. Let me fix that. OBS. ODIY. Okay. There we go. Now they can see your freaking heads. Nance and Philip were both cut off. So before anyone else gets here, I just kind of wanted to talk about your guys' different pieces. I guess I kind of want to like just set you up to talk about it on your own. Just to say like, what got you to write your piece? What did you write about? And then in a little bit, we'll come back to the bigger question, which is like, how has that been developing after the writing? Because there's always more writing that kind of overflows the initial piece. Let's start with Nick, just in case. I mean, unless you want to get somewhere, but I'm also like, if you're just going to be in transit, let's just go.
I can walk and talk, and give everybody a little tour of the city on the way.
Nice.
No, but so what inspired the piece? Well, you know, it's interesting how I was grouped with Finkelstein and Loncar, and the subject being identity politics, the limitations of identity politics. And I think with Lacan's notion of sexual difference, by the way, my piece, I should have said at the beginning, is called Difference as Such. And the notion of sexual difference in Lacan, which is one of the trickiest notions, I do not purport to understand all of the nuances of it. And there's a lot of controversy and debate surrounding what these formulae of sexuation are. But I thought, you know what? What's stopping me from going for like the top shelf Lacanian concept, the one that's the most hotly debated, possibly. You know, Todd was saying earlier how Lacan goes from an emphasis on, you know, drive, this concept of drive in Seminar 11, to a focus on the absence of the sexual relation as, let's say, you know, the motive force behind his theory. And I wanted to kind of bring it down to earth. That's what I attempted to do. Did I succeed? I'm not sure, but I wanted to sort of domesticate it and situate it within the conversation, the debate that's being had right now about the nature of gender and biology, biological sex, that is, and reveal how there is this third category. There's a third option here, which ultimately is contingent upon an understanding of different psychoanalytic categories. So there is a lot of preliminary work that needs to be done, I think, in order to really grasp the genius of Lacan's idea of sexual difference. But it can also be understood better through examples. And if we have an appreciation of this concept of the unconscious, starting with the Freudian notion of the unconscious, and then understanding Lacan's elaboration of it through Saussurian linguistics, we can kind of approach what he means by sexual difference in the notion that the unconscious ultimately is something like a message that has no proper recipient. For lack of a proper recipient, there is this concept of the other, the big other. And
Yes.
this otherness, which is already kind of like included in the message, is ultimately self-referential, let's say. There is no ultimate complementarity to sexuality. And in that sense, like,
oh, sorry.
yeah.
Oh, well, I like how you started talking about sexual difference in your piece that appeared at a place that was talking about cancel culture, and it like summoned Nina like out of the void. She just like came in like right then. Like that's like when she entered. But I want you to finish your thought. I do want to say something really quick for Russ and Nina who just joined us, and just say like to you both, what we're doing is Nick and then Philip, and then you both hopefully will be able to say a thing about your piece, what inspired it. And then once everybody's done that, I'm going to read off the publisher statement from Underground Theory, and then everyone can talk about the book. Okay, so that's pretty much it. But back to it, Nick. I'm sorry to cut you off like that, man.
Yeah, no worries. I'll try to sum everything up as best I can. It's basically like what I'm trying to get at is identity seems to be this core concept that so many of these political debates, sorry about the ambient noise here, but so many political debates that dominate questions of the personal and political seem to revolve around. And nobody really has a good definition of it. You know, like nobody has a really good understanding of what would be a fixed identity, you know, one that's attainable and perfectly realizable, like one that we could operate within on a day-to-day basis. You know, there's a kind of romantic notion of identity. There's inherited cultural markers that we can distance ourselves from or try to, you know, better adapt ourselves to depending on like our tastes. But ultimately, there's a very hazy notion that we tend to be working under. And, you know, there's an identity politics on the right. There's an identity politics on the left. One is more, you know, maybe clearly vocalized as such. The other one would be more like disavowed. But really, it all, I think, maybe Lacan wouldn't say so, but I'd say within a, you know, Zupanchichian, if that's how you turn her name into an adjective, or Žižekian framework.
Sounds good.
Which don't always coincide. It's based on a concept of a kind of complementarity, a sexual complementarity, which in a popular ideology surrounding questions of sexuality, gender, whether we're talking about a multiplicity of potential subject positions that you can adopt, to orient yourself in terms of a kind of amorphous concept of sexuality, or this old school kind of like yin yang, man marries woman and they are, you know, sanctioned through the institution of marriage. That's a couple forever. Either way, there's like a kind of, there's this sense that it's either substance that needs to be realized in a multiplicity of forms, or the substance is realized through this complementary. Identity always wants its other, as if there was a preformed other for it, or it needs to be shaped in a way that realizes its like innate essence. And that is a presupposition that is unexamined by both sides, in my opinion.
I think your response also kind of at least, yeah, it's easy to see how it also responds to the third question we haven't actually gotten to yet, which will come after the publishing statement, which is, how has your thinking changed since the last piece in Underground Theory? How's it developed? Has it matured? And the thing is like, you've obviously at the time you're on the spot in a presentation with people doing seemingly very different work, especially Finkelstein on cancel culture, and you're like, how am I supposed to do this? But it did make sense. I mean, you weren't grouped that way because it made sense. You were grouped that way because you were close to New York City, and that's where the event was. but it actually worked. And I'm glad that it got the gears turning and that now you're actually bringing all of this into thinking about identity politics in this more robust way. So everyone else will all have to be briefer now because Nick went so long. I'm ribbing him because I love him.
Sorry about that.
If I didn't love you, man, I wouldn't rib you. That's what Žižek always says, right? But okay, let's let everybody say a couple things about their pieces. We'll try to keep it really short so we can get to the publisher statement and then kind of have a free-for-all, okay? But I'll try to keep everyone from kind of taking too much time now that there's a good grouping here. And so, Philip, you were going to be next, and then we'll go Nina, Russ, Christine, and Andrew. Just basically like your name, your background, like why you wrote the piece, what it was about, but try to keep it like a minute and a half.
Hey everyone, my name is Philip. Nick, really nice essay on Difference as Such. I came to Theory Underground through a conversation Dave had with Cadell last, which I came to him through being dissatisfied with my university education. The first class I did was Carl Jasper's The Idea of the University, and I wrote a piece called The Soldering of the American Mind, which is a play on Jonathan Haidt's essay, The Coddling of the American Mind. And basically, it goes straight into what Leon was saying about these sutures, these new associations that we have to make. And soldering kind of takes Ian McGilchrist's idea from The Master and His Emissary and says that we have to constantly rebuild the bridge of the corpus callosum as we are becoming subjects in today's culture. And one of the things I really like about the collection is there is a piece by Catherine Liu that talks about not writing like an academic. And there's some tension with my piece because I do come up with a bunch of neologisms, but I think they are helpful ones. So I go into rather thinking about like microaggressions, thinking about microdigressions in a way that's hopefully creative, of new ways of associating with the reality that we find ourselves in.
Nailed it. Nina.
Oh, yes. Hello,
Welcome.
everyone. Very lovely to see you. Yeah, so I can't remember the title of the piece I wrote, actually, to be honest, but it was something to do with dialogue, and I don't know if you have it. If you prompt me, I can...
Let's see. Anne might remember off the...
I remember where I wrote it. I was on a train.
Imagine... I'm trying to... How to navigate this thing? Yeah, so it's right here. It's called On the Necessity of Talking. Yeah.
Right. That would make sense. So I guess, I'm a trained philosopher. I'm no longer in the academy. I was for 13 years. I still teach philosophy to adults, but retired people largely, and it's much better. There's no institutional pressure or assessment, and it's literally people who are who've had the most amazing lives and speak freely, and who basically pay 20 quid or whatever to do a 12-week course. So yeah, that's a lot better. I couldn't sort of stand being in the academy anymore for many reasons. But I'm fundamentally committed to philosophy as a discipline, and I would understand it first and foremost as a question of relationality, even or especially in the sense of antagonism. And I really appreciated what Nicholas was saying about the sexual relation and these questions of the unconscious being like a message, and how do we understand basically a sort of these claims about identity. And I really think it's profoundly a question of recognition, a desire for recognition, and in that sense we can understand it sympathetically, even when it's very annoying and it has come to characterize a certain bureaucratic mode of existence and so on. I think we have to sort of see it symptomatically as a kind of dislocation of being, that that identity, whether left or right, and I agree it's everywhere, is something like a kind of plea for recognition and a plea for dialogue, actually. And I think the trick or the difficulty or what we have to do is to get people to understand, if you like, that conversation or dialogue can be really difficult, and that if you disagree with someone or if you have a problem with something they're saying, it is not the end of the relationship, it's the beginning. And when I first started teaching philosophy in the 90s and early 2000s, people made mistakes. Like the whole point of a philosophy seminar, was to try out ideas, and that people would, like, oh, what if, I don't know, like make wild claims about abortion or murder or whatever, and people would just try something out, and no one had to stand by their claim. If you see what I mean, like it was an experiment in thinking and arguing, and precisely only through those sorts of crazy claims would people come to an understanding of their own thought and the thought of others through dialogue. So basically, I wrote this kind of very simplistic piece, which is a plea for the recognition of dialogue, because I feel like so many people are being dismissed using these black magic words like fascist or whatever, so that people don't have to speak to people they disagree with, and it's hurting them more than it hurts the people that they're accusing.
Well said. And then Russ, it's good to see you, man. We got to interview Russ on tour, but we haven't published that because that's for the tour documentary. And so the tour was the first leg of the tour in the United States as well as Canada. And we'll be going into Europe in May. Hope to see some of you then, like Christine and Nina, hopefully. It'll be at least myself and Nance, and for part of the tour because she's going to be in school at the time. But yeah, Russ, how's it going, man?
Good. I mean, before I say anything about the piece, I just want to. I'm pretty angry with Nick right now because the fact that he was walking and talking means I can't use that as an excuse anymore, that I have to go somewhere. Now I'm just gonna have to. You could put headphones in. You could. So yeah, thanks for ruining that for all of us now. So. Yeah. Okay. No, seriously. The piece that I wrote for the collection, and I'm very happy to be in the collection with such esteemed company, is titled "Enjoy Your Trump," or how we learn to love the id and forget about the superego, something like that. That's close to the title. And it's actually a piece that I had knocking around for a while, and I wasn't sure what to do with it. I initially gave versions of it at a couple conferences. And anyway, Mikey was talking about, I was having a conversation with him, and it had to do with the fact that in Marxist theory, there is very little attention paid anymore, at least, to psychoanalysis, particularly the notion of enjoyment or of jouissance. And so I kind of repurposed the piece a little bit along those lines, because the impetus behind it was I was so sick of hearing, and this is going back like 5 or 6 years now, I've been working on it for a while, that Trump is the id. And just from a psychoanalytic theory perspective, it's entirely wrong. He's the superego. He's the father of enjoyment. He's père jouissance. And so I started looking at all the different ways in which, and this is the first section of the essay, after the introduction proper, that looks at the ways in which Trump actually operates according to enjoyment. He's a locus for enjoyment for his followers. And then, okay, that's interesting, but the part that I like most about it is that I kind of flip it, and the second half of the essay or a chapter is about the way in which not the left, but center left liberals use Trump. If Trump is a sort of symptom of this kind of unbridled enjoyment, scapegoating of the other on the right, then on the left, or at least the center left, Trump is it's a good way to focus. Trump is a good tool to focus on in order to not do anything, in order to remain within this like capitalist realist mode and not have any sort of politics outside of that. And so I just give a number of examples of the way in which, mostly just the Democratic Party, particularly the center left wing, but uses Trump in this way. So Trump is both a symptomatic figure, I think, on both the right and left. That's what unites both sides, even though obviously one is pro-Trump and one, makes Trump the the avatar of all evil in the world.
Thank you. Yeah. How about you? We've got Dr. Christine Louis Dit-Sully coming to us from near Freiburg, Germany, I think. Oh, you're muted. Oh no. Let's see. The Zoom side looks like it's muted. Still muted. Ah, crap. I can read your lips. You definitely said, oh, crap. If you just move your lips in such a way that I can continue to read them, I could just sit here and tell everyone what you're saying. Oh, I think I saw Christine calling for her partner, who will probably hopefully be able to help. Let's come back to Christine. We'll go to Anne first.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. It's great to see some people who we met on tour and some other people who I hope to come meet in the future in Europe on that leg of the tour. So I was kind of the main editor of the book or of the anthology, and that was exciting and crazy because I don't necessarily have the credentials to like
audio
edit an
now
anthology.
try.
Oh, we can hear you now.
Try, darling.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. They can hear me.
You
Sorry.
That's okay.
yourself.
No worries. But anyways, yeah, editing the anthology was awesome because I did get to read these pieces over multiple times, and I'm looking forward to over the next year kind of doing a third read through of just for pleasure, enjoyment, whatever. Because I was doing a little more technical reading, catching for those last minute typos and extra commas, and the formatting should be over here, the paragraph should be over here. And so I'm glad that the book turned out as beautiful as it did. I think it was Samuel Loncar who told us that he edits books professionally, and he said that this is the best edited anthology he's ever seen. And I think part of that was Dave's crafting of the order. It's just like every one follows so well from the next one. And then, yeah, we did our best to put out something quality. We had some big names. We said, okay, even though this is underground and we're self-publishing, we want to have a quality product that people will be proud to be in. And so I'm really proud to be part of this anthology. My piece was in that education, critique of higher education section called The Idea of the Neoliberal University. So I was inspired by Carl Jasper's book titled The Idea of the University and his positive critique on kind of what an ideal university should look like, academic freedom, a community of scholars and professors who share the common goal of seeking truth. And then I just wrote about and reflected on kind of my own experiences in the university as not only a student, also an adjunct professor and a researcher of neoliberal higher education. And that all happened within a very short period of time after I graduated, being student researcher and instructor. And that just gave me a lot of really interesting perspectives and then sociological research and literature to pull from. And so it's just kind of me like venting my frustrations in a somewhat academic way. I think those frustrations since I wrote that piece have only grown as I'm kind of back dealing with the university and the bureaucratic bullshit, I guess we'll say. I applied to a graduate program and got into the particular program, but the person who's in charge of moving my application along hasn't done so yet, and I'm running out of time, and so that's causing me to rethink everything. So I'm sure that will appear in future reflections on the matter, and the fact that this university that I was applying to has gutted over half of the philosophical and political or cultural based courses in all across all different departments: English, communications, sociology, political science, all of it. Like all the theory and philosophy related courses in each of those fields are gone now. And so that really changes everything. And I'm just having to radically rethink, what am I even doing? So yeah, thank you so much, Dave, for including me in the anthology and for letting me be part of it. And thank you all for being here and for submitting. It's really awesome. It's a really awesome book, and I'm proud of it.
And now we're back to Christine.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. Welcome.
Oh, okay. I'm really sorry for the usual mess that I make with the technology.
It's relatable.
Yeah, I don't have time with technology. I mean, I'm interested, but I don't have the time. You want to know why I wrote the what's that? Okay,
Oh,
so
never
my
mind that. Yeah.
my part is the title is Universalist or Identity Politics, and I'm saying that there is a choice to make for people who want to make a freer my accent more free, more human or more human center social order. So basically, I'm asking the questions, and I would like people to answer whether or not we need to carry on with the universalist politics, or start with universalist politics or carry on with identity politics. And so my essays is start with the issue of race, because I've been discussing the issue of race for quite a while now. And but the race, the issue of race for me, it's an aspect of developing universalist politics, and my aim is basically it's reviving universalist politics. And what I mean by universalist politics is politics in a way, because I argue that the identity politics is not politics. And what I mean by identity politics, to be clear, is politics that where people use social identities as a way of arguing for better resources or power for particular identity groups. So when you look at politics today, what people call politics today, I argue that most of it is identity politics. And so you do not have any more of the universalist aspect of politics, because politics has a universalist aspect of it, and as well as a philosophical aspect. You only have the identity part of it. So people are fighting for identities in different ways. So you Black people, Jewish people today, Palestinian people, you're basically using a social identity as a way of entering the political discussions, and you're asking for resources, power, benefits or whatever. And for me, this is no longer discussions about what the world would be better for humanity, or what will be better for society, for human beings. It's a discussion of how each identity groups wants to have a peace in what they see as limited resources. And so on the issue of race, for me, it's important because, first of all, because we are living in a world where racial thinking and racism is still very much important, especially racial thinking. Even if people want to argue that they're anti-racist, they're basing the world on the issue of race. So they're looking at the world through race, and it seems to be arguing that the world can only be understood as a competition between different races. So you have a racial thinking of the world, a world through view through race. And that's the reason why, even if you're anti-racist, you're still using this issue of race by promoting your own racial groups. So Black and white, and like I said, Jews and Muslims, it's all through a racial identity that they are basically arguing for politics. And like I said, my aim has been to that I mean, my thing is that I have faith in humanity, and I think that we can do a world better than it is today. And to be able to do that, we have to be able to have a visions of what we could do, what the progress that we can have from this society to the next. And one of them is to be able to create a world that is better for all, not just for individual groups. So that's the reason why I'm promoting the issue of politics instead of identity politics. I'm not sure if I'm very clear on that things, but this is how I started that essay. And this is some of the things that I keep coming back again and again and again, because this is my main things, is basically pushing universalist politics, i.e. politics.
Thank you. And I wanted to say really quickly that I understand some of you are just dropping in, like, because it's a sort of open house. And so if you've got to go, I do let me know, DM me in the chat because I'll try to prioritize your ability to respond to somebody or whatever. If you've got to go before, basically we've got an hour for this event currently scheduled. And so I'm hoping everyone gets an opportunity to talk, that nobody feels rushed. Though, of course, in the introduction, we're going to keep it shorter. So that means you, Big Sig, you're the one to go now. So I've gotten to actually have you present on your piece on this channel twice, once as a live stream, but then it wasn't recorded properly. The other time, it thankfully is up, and we just had some really awesome engagement with that one. So yeah, what did you write about, Andrew?
Yeah, so for all y'all who don't know me, I am Andrew Flores, and I go by the username The Big Signorelli. I'm the other half of a YouTube channel with Nick Castellucci in the group called The Vanishing Mediators. We're a bunch of autodidacts who are really engaged with Lacan. And me personally, I would consider myself along the lines of psychoanalytic theorist, but I'm currently in the military right now. I've never been to university. I'm finishing up my last 8 years of slavery, so I'm glad to finally get out and pursue my goals as a clinician, as a psychoanalytic clinician. But my essay is called Therapism, A New Ideology, which was inspired by a talk that Dave, Nick, and Michael Downs and I had on a documentary created by Jonah Hill called Stutz, which was a life kind of biography of his therapist and like inside view of like what it's like for him to go into therapy. And so we did a talk on like what would it be like for a Lacanian to critique that and also give some like pros as well as the cons and how to introduce these concepts of Freudian and Lacanian psychoanalytic theory, metapsychologically wise and clinically wise, to someone who's new to that if they were to watch the documentary Stutz. And so when Dave invited me to give an essay, he proposed that, the therapism topic. And so I approached it from what I'm influenced by, and that's the Freudo-Marxist tradition. So people like Althusser, Žižek and the Ljubljana School, and right now, Kojin Karatani. And so what I did was to show how three people that I had in mind was one Stutz, Jordan Peterson, and then the infamous Gabor Mate, who's gaining more popularity each day, on how they're not the cause of this therapism thing, but they're rather more of like masks, like, or a focal point, which kind of allow for more leverage for this sort of cognitive mapping. And so what I link therapism as an ideology is something that produces a sort of impossible imperative. It's a superego. Essentially, it's a super egoic enjoyment or injunction that says, be happy, be healthy, be yourself. It individualizes you and kind of displaces a lot of these, what we would say are psychological problems from economic, social, and class struggle conditions from a Freudo-Marxist perspective, and how it reifies ideology. Because my other main premise in the last of the essay is how ideology is not a full interpolation, but rather failed interpolation. And so whenever an ideology fails, something comes up in a super egoic injunction form to keep capitalism running without us realizing it. And so therapy is like that for the sort of working middle class. And it has a definitely, since Dave is very much in the PMC discourse, it does have a PMC role, because you see this in corporations now Amazon warehouses have meditation booths. Even in the military, before you couldn't do this, but now it's like, oh, there's a talk at 10:00. Go to this talk in the conference hall. They're going to tell you about how it's important to take care of your circadian rhythm, or to eat healthy, or the benefits of like going to seek a counselor. And so all these ways to kind of displace structural stultification or power discourse or whatever, and at the same time still enjoy without realizing it. And so that's pretty much what I did. And needless to say, I feel like there's a lot I could critique, and definitely you probably have found some criticism on there, because I was very more polemic about it in terms of people like Mate, who's very, out of all the other two, very adamant about the updated psychological research. He deals in attachment theory. He's dealing with trauma discourse. He's always talking about the latest psychological research from this university. But needless to say, it's like he takes God out of the front door and puts him back into the back door by, never questioning his presuppositions. And even as a sort of leftist theorist, he doesn't identify capitalism. He just says that, we live in an addictive, indifferent culture that doesn't allow us to fulfill our need of belonging and nurturing. And so, we need to identify and heal our authentic selves. Mm-hmm. So right here, we see how superego injunction doesn't get at the heart of the traumatic real in the Lacanian sense. Rather, it displaces it by saying you need to become more authentic, which is part of the individualization of capital.
Nailed it, man. You get better at succincting this whole line of critique each time. And by the way, this line of critique, according to me, is CPT, Critique of Psychiatry and Therapism. It's a field. Welcome to the field. You're one of the, this century's people who's doing it on the internet. Like, there's not a lot of people doing it on the internet. So when people go looking for it, hopefully they find you, hopefully find us doing that. And it's something that ultimately in the long run, I hope that we'll have full courses on, right? But really quick here. So order of operations wise, for people just joining on the live stream, as well as people who are watching this in the future and everything like that. Look, as the director, organizer, manager, CEO, president, priest, whatever the fuck. I'm just kidding. But as the person who's put this thing together, you've all just really, oh my God, you guys are the reason that I wanted to do this right here. You're the reason that I wanted to do this, and not you as individuals. I like you all as individuals. I wouldn't have asked you. I wouldn't have. I like your thinking. I think that you provoke something in me. Otherwise, I would not have, wanted you to be in here. But it's not as individuals. It's as part of what I take to be the current situation. You're all part of the current situation. And it's obviously my own perspective on the current situation, but I see it as the situation. And part of the problem with the situation is what Nina was getting to, which is the breakdown in actual talking. And that Theory Underground does ultimately what she's doing with Compact, which is it creates a space for different voices that aren't able to actually be heard and have conversation and engage in contradiction in a productive manner. The difference being is obviously that's like a thing. It's like an actual that's like a real deal. I don't know how to. This is like a sort of pseudo academic solo project. So it is different, but the academic side is courses, right? So ultimately those are articles. This is courses. And what I hope to see come out of Underground Theory is really, I can't say it better than what is in the publisher's statement. And so that's why I shared it there in the chat, is so that you can all follow along if you want to read it, if you don't have a copy of Underground Theory handy, though you should. And Nance, if you're ready now, I'm going to put it up on the screen and you could just read it for us all, because you've got such a good reader voice and microphone.
I don't know about that. Few of us have anything in common these days, outside of the common knowledge that there is no future in existing institutions, movements, or the ideologies that rationalize them. Never before has it been so important that we think and interrogate the situation we are in anew. Nobody has the answer, Yet there is this idea that if you say the wrong thing, you might have to live with it the rest of your life, or that it could obstruct your opportunities for upward mobility. Professors, activists, and media personalities feel this pressure every day, but so do regular workers who are, for all practical purposes, barred from public life anyway. This culture of fear and silencing stultifies thought and discourse, leading to a genocide of voice, plurality, and the utter negation of dialectics. People who don't even go on social media at all, ever, live under a virtual specter that haunts and regulates their discourse. How do we lift the fetters that obstruct a cultural unfolding? Not by playing into the overly neurotic self-censorship or fear of guilt by association, not by overthinking what we say, not by apologizing when others choose to interpret our statements in the least charitable light, and definitely not by holding our writings up to a standard so high that it holds us back from engaging with language, the world, and others around us in new ways. We don't have the time, energy, or budget for perfection. In the same way that rock music in the 1970s was already co-opted and overproduced for mass consumption, thus leading to an explosion of underground music, so publishing today has become sterile and scripted. In English classes, or whatever language was native in your upbringing, we are taught form over substance, grammar over ideas, definitions instead of concepts. In the same way that such a great percentage of the population is schooled to hate mathematics, a perhaps proportionate percentage of us learn to fear writing. We are too worried that others will spot a mistake. This is why, in theory circles, people keep their cards hidden, alluding to what one knows rather than putting the cards out on the table and trying to genuinely think in dialogue with others. This is the opposite of language learning spaces, where everyone knows they are always learning, and that failure is part of the process of learning in any genuinely educational space. This is why Theory Underground puts its multilingualism social clubs front and center. By immersing ourselves in the deep end of other languages, getting lost in the unknown, and failing together, we accustom ourselves to the necessary conditions of learning itself. Trial and error can be fun once you realize you and everyone else is always already wrong in some way, especially if you realize there's nothing really to lose, and people who matter are going to love you anyway, warts and all. Of course, this can be overdone. We don't want to waste precious time energy reading incoherent or half-baked thoughts thrown together in manic furies passing itself off as genius. This is why we still have a weekly writers' workshop component at the Theory Underground Live Hub events. But the emphasis is on substance, not form. Beyond the question of whether your point is getting across, we aim to hold ourselves to higher standards than the average state university. We try to model learning as a way of life, which requires becoming comfortable with failing and learning as you go. So, when your critical eye catches a spelling or grammar mistake, pride yourself in the fact that you were reading underground shit. That is, real people with no institutional backing learning how to think and communicate, not for upward mobility, profit, or fame, but because it matters as an end in itself.
Amazing. Thank you. And I realized, Nance, that you didn't do, you missed the introduction. You didn't do one. We'll come back to you because I want to just get into exactly what we just talked about in the publisher statement, which is like allowing contradictions to kind of like unravel and like allow people to speak. And so, Nina, you said you would really like to respond to Christine when appropriate. And I've always thought it would be cool to hear you two talk. And so, like, I think that could kind of lay the foundation here for the next 45 minutes. But everyone else, if you've got questions for specific people, go ahead and like say in the chat, just like Nina did, like what you will want to ask, and I'll kind of work with y'all. All right, let's go.
Sure. I just want to say that statement from Nance, I really agree with. I really appreciate it. It was very similar to like kind of what I said about teaching in dialogue just randomly, but not randomly because we're basically all on the same, page in a way. And it really occurred to me when you were speaking that like throughout my teaching when I was in the institutions, the only thing that I thought that we could convey really was enthusiasm. Like I realized like it wasn't about particular ideas or whatever. It was like if you could just convey your own like almost possession by an idea, or like even if you were angry with an idea, right? Like, or especially like if you could just sort of communicate that, like that was what teaching is, or you know, like it isn't. And you know, it got so awful with the like level of anxiety of students, because, and I totally understand that them, like I would never blame the students, right? Like they were just so worried because they're borrowing so much money and they were doing all this other work outside of university, and they were like being pressured into like an idea of the future which was kind of falling away. And so I like really felt for them. But it basically like became really hard to have a conversation because the inflexibility was like so great, and they were so anxious about getting something wrong, you know, because like someone might record them, and like what if they said like the wrong thing, and some, you know, it was so awful. So I think like obviously I sort of vaguely transcended that whole thing, because like some people have to do that, like go beyond the the big other, I guess. You know, the big other doesn't exist, but like you have to ultimately think for yourself. And you know, it is very painful, I think, also to like lose all your friends and or most of them. But I think the thing that I wanted to say, just in relation to what Christine was saying, and I have heard Christine speak before actually, you know, and so I love this point so much about universalism, and I have thought so often about this idea of like a negative universality, like what it means to like basically share pain or share suffering and share lack, not in the sense that suffering individuates you, because this is like, actually I would say the fascist move is to say that my pain makes me who I am, with the emphasis on I, right? Like that only my pain is belongs to me or my group, right? Whereas actually the reality of suffering is that like everybody fucking suffers, you know what I mean? And actually that pain is, whether it's physical pain, mental pain, social pain, like is surprisingly similar. You know, and it's actually this kind of lack of an organic whole, a lack of completeness, a lack of belonging, that is the thing that is shared. And I think this is actually like you have it in Fanon, you have it in the idea of a new humanism that is not one of aggression and pride and, you know, so on, but rather in like the early Marx, when Marx talks about like the class with nothing to lose. And if you say like, okay, he says nothing to lose but their chains. So like say, if you say like the nothing is like substantial, right? Like the nothing is what we have. If you see what I mean. Like, so what unifies us is this like lack, or this kind of failing, or the suffering. And you know, what's really surprising is how similar that is. You know what I mean? And I think that like this contemporary identitarian narcissism is to say, no, you can't understand my suffering. Like this is the political obstacle, or like the scandal, you know. And it's not to say that there isn't difference. It's not to say that things don't play out differently for women, for people from different racial groups, from, you know, different ages, whatever. Like we're all different, you know. And I think like Badiou was so good on this point. He said like difference is what there is, you know, like it's not an achievement. You know, it's like humanity is different, like it's plural, you know, but actually what unites us, or what's interesting, is that are those moments of sameness. And I, you know, of course that sounds, you know, dubious in some ways, but I think if the sameness is one of like an absence or a lack, that we recognize this shared capacity to suffer, something like this, I don't know, like to have a politics of that is, you know, would be oppositional to what we have now, which is this kind of substantive identitarian group logic, which is just static and, you know, unhelpful and actually hierarchical.
So, Christine, that was a question for you, but I also kind of got what. So Nina, could you kind of just restate the question in a sentence?
Oh, sorry. I suppose it was this in relation to what Christine was saying about universality and whether there would be a universality of the negative, or like, you know, to kind of have a psychoanalytic universality that would be the basis for a political form of solidarity, right? Like that could oppose precisely, you know, the substantive identitarian cashed out exclusive idea that like only some people suffer, or, you know, some people suffer more than others.
I mean, oh, I can start.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
We.
Oh, sorry. I was waiting for. Okay. I have to say yes and no. I can understand where Nina comes from, in the sense that, yeah, it's true that people trying to, when in identity politics, people trying to argue that their suffering is exceptional, is different, and nobody can understand their emotions or feelings or their experiences. So we all supposed to stay in our lane, and this is one of the consequences of identity politics. I have to say that it's also the consequences of identity. I have to say that one of the consequences of identity politics is also inhumanity in that sense, because if my pain is more important than your pain, then I can just dismiss your pain, because my pain has to be heard more than yours. So there is also the consequences of that is inhumanity that you can see. For me, you can see it very clearly with what's happening in Israel and Palestine. But I disagree with Nina on the universalism based on suffering, because I have to say that is such such a low. I think it's not only low ambitions, but also I find it slightly inhuman way of understanding universalism. It's like we're all suffering, so we can all understand each other for suffering. God, I mean, for me, it's the same level as the liberal universalism that's based on we're all human beings, so we have the same biology, so that we are all we can all be together because we all have the same biology. I just found it really basically it's anti-politics, and when I stress and I always try to stress is the universalism of politics, not the universalism of biology or the universalism of suffering. And what I mean by universalism of politics is that we go further than I see human beings as, you know, we have biology, but I see human beings as something more than biology. So we go further than our nature, or suffering, or emotions, or feelings, and we try to visualize a world that is good for humanity in a sense. And politics for me is that is a human activity where people are discussing what will be good for society. So society, you could say, society for a nation, or society as humanity as a such. So in the past, people were, when people were supporting capitalism or communism, they didn't discuss, oh, communism will be good for the Russians, or communism will be good for the French, but they were talking about communism will be good for humanity. Or other people, the opposite, will say capitalism will be good for humanity. They have a sense of what will be good as for humanity as such. This is the universalist sense of politics that is lost today. And so people are discussing what will be good for blacks, what will be good for white, what will be good for Palestine, what will be good for Jewish, what will be good for the woman or men or trans. You see what I mean? We basically lost the sense of universalist ambitions, basically, in the sense of what will be good for human society. And so, and I'm sorry to say, but I don't think suffering would be a very good. I'm laughing, but I found it really anti-human, and anti-politics. This idea of using suffering as a universalist aspect of humanity. I don't agree on that level.
I'll want to come back to you too if Nina has something to rejoin in a minute, not just yet. And I now want to get Christine to have a conversation with Todd McGowan, because he's the author of the book on identity politics that argues for against identity politics and for a universality based in lack. And then that's the bridge to me being able to say it's the lack of it's our shared lack of time energy that ultimately is, like, I say that. And so now we've got our own fight to have here, I guess, which would be fantastic, I think. But we'll come back to that because maybe we'll have a lot of other people asking questions. We're about to have Andrew ask Russ a question, but first, Samuel, I want to welcome you to the chat. This is Dr. Samuel Loncar. We met up with him in New York City. He was there at the presentation that Nick gave on difference as such. He gave a fantastic presentation on orthodoxy in cancel culture. And it was fire. So Samuel, we want to give you an opportunity to do what everyone else has done, which is to say a few words about your submission to the volume. And I'll just say beforehand, like it was really cool because your piece engages heavily with Marshall McLuhan, but you didn't know that there would be a posthumously published, never before published piece by Marshall McLuhan in the volume. And so I was able to put you two in the same section, and that was just awesome. Oh, you're muted. Oh.
Yeah, that was an amazing honor, Dave, to appear with Marshall McLuhan by appearing with Underground Theory sums up the coolness, I think.
So yeah, but well, what did you write about? And we these introductions are basically, you can say a little bit about who you are, what you do, but specifically this piece, what you wrote about, what caused you to write it or submit it. But keep it to a couple minutes, and then people might ask you questions, or you can ask other people questions if you read their work and have a question for them.
Dave, sorry, are you talking to me now? I didn't want to interrupt anything.
No, that was you. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Hey guys, great to see you, Nancy, and hey Nick. Hi everyone else. Nice to meet you. The piece I wrote for Dave was a piece I'd actually had drafted for years, and I tried different venues for. I remember submitting it to a political theory conference when I was at Yale, and I thought, oh yeah, political theory, they'll be interested in like the kind of the economic issues around property, and there was no interest whatsoever in this sort of argument, which was an ambitious argument about how Plato's analysis of writing actually predicts, I think, in the long term computing, and also predicts the convergence of computing into the sort of end state of capitalism. So when Dave offered me the opportunity and told me about the reader, I thought, wow, this is the perfect context to publish a pretty ambitious theoretical piece. I'm interested in the history of sociology and combining kind of classical sociological figures like Durkheim and Weber with other less classical figures like Norbert Elias, for example, and figures who maybe aren't as canonical in sociology. And so for media theory, for me, I wanted to show that Plato gives an argument about technology that essentially says people who invent technologies always misunderstand them, for the same reason that a parent is a bad person to ask if their kid was guilty of some infraction at school, because the creator of a thing has a real strong affection for it. And so in Plato's story, he has the god, the Egyptian king, Pharaoh Ammon, say, it's for one person to give birth to an invention, and it's for another person to say what it means. So I think this is a very profound insight into the division of productive labor. And Plato's insight is, I think, relevant to Silicon Valley and art and everything, which is whoever makes something has a unique but challenging relationship to it. And so writing, Plato thought would be something that people confused with the technology of enhancement, when writing is primarily a technology of diminishment. And that's its great virtue. Writing diminishes the need to use your memory. It diminishes the need to access the same things over and over again by making you capable of accessing them, right? If you have like an oral culture, you have 1,000 lines of poetry in your mind easily, which people used to have even in the 1930s in a literary culture. You partly keep them fresh by you repeating them over and over again, right? If suddenly someone said, hey, by the way, every poem you have memorized is going to go out of print and no one's going to have any copies, you would probably very feverishly start just reciting them all the time and be like, I got to start writing these down because I'm going to be the last text. And so Plato's view of textuality is that textuality is orality. And so once you textualize textuality in writing, you get a very strange mimetic effect where people think that whatever power writing has, speech will have in the written form, and it doesn't. So instead of helping us remember better, speech lets us forget better. And so the logic of writing, therefore, implies that as writing gets better, memory will be less important in human society. Now, this is a very profound idea because in the ancient world, novelty is a bad thing. Novelty is the Greeks liked novelty, but everything prestigious was old. And so the shift to the value of modernity is partly constitutive of modernity. We think new things are good things. Every other culture in all the world has thought new things are dangerous things or bad things in principle. But if you have to remember a lot of stuff, you'll have a natural bias towards the value of the past because you have to care about the past to do anything in your society. So with a fully literate society, you get a society in which no one has to actually remember anything, which gives you an empirical prediction. And the empirical prediction is, as literacy rates increase in a society, you'll get a decline in the active working memory of the society. I think you could actually show that to be more or less to be true. And if you look now, all of the memory tests indicate that current young people today have the worst working memories of anyone ever measured in human history. So that's the section I call nepenthe, or the forgetting. So the logic of writing then leads to the development of bureaucracy. I explore this in depth, analyzing it with Weber and others. But then the punchline of the essay is that because the distinction between capital and labor is essential to a classical understanding of what capitalism is and what distinguishes it from other economic modalities, once you get the development of AI and computers, the logic of writing is fully manifest, which is it's autonomously self-related, and you don't need to know anything at all. And so now you can write papers without writing them. You just say, ChatGPT, write me a paper that sounds like this. You've probably seen the articles about authenticity because people are using this for eulogies and people are like, is it real? I think now as a person who reads a lot, I feel like we can already tell ChatGPT style. So I assume ChatGPT is going to radically change writing styles because we're all going to iterate around not wanting to sound like ChatGPT and then it'll copy us. So we're already in a weird, I think, tail chasing situation with AI that's fascinating. So I do think that the emergence of the computer is something logically that comes out of writing. And I think it's a mistake to disentangle the technological systems we're in from literacy, especially the computer system. So that's the real burden of the essays. I know that's probably a little opaque. I'm sorry. It's kind of one of the more dense pieces I wrote, but it's really about framing the origin of modern bureaucratic division of labor and technological revolutions in literacy and computing, with actually part of the inner logic of what writing is and why writing has to be understood, not the way a founder understands it, like Sam Altman, whatever happened at OpenAI. I still don't know the story, but some people, Elon Musk said recently, he thinks Sam maybe was doing something dangerous or they discovered something dangerous. But if you listen to someone like Sam Altman, they're always just like God advertisers. They're like, well, we basically want to make God. That's my ambition, which is like, well, thanks for being honest. I don't think I want you to make God because I don't like any of God's daddies so far. So I think I'm a sort of suspicious of that. And then if you ask, well, what is AI from the user standpoint? It's what writing would be if it could talk back to you. And now it can. And that's exactly what Plato says writing can't do. Plato says, if you mess up what I say, Socrates says, I can say that's not what I meant. but the text can't speak back. And now the weird thing is that last illusion that the text isn't autonomous, we've cut away. Of course, it's still an illusion. We made ChatGPT, but we don't know what we are. So now I think what we've fully done is writing has fully externalized its own opacity as a technology, which is we've created a system so profound, we recognize we don't understand ourselves when we encounter it. And that's very important. I think beyond the economic thing, which I end the article on, which is about capitalism, that leads to God. And so that's ultimately why capital, to me, is in Marx, the development of Feuerbach's idea of the human and a Feuerbach's critique of the idea of God and the idealist systems. And so I think capital for Marxism becomes the divine concept, which it is, rightly, because it's the most important unifying concept that brings together all the immanent contradictions of society and sublates them through constantly liquefying their concrete limitations. And so the constant liquefaction of concrete limitation, that's part of the Hegelian Marxist dialectic. If you then say, where does that go? I think it leads to capitalism's apocalypse, which is capitalism reveals itself to be explicitly a mode of human theology. So that's, I think, what we see now is the computer is now something that people are quite openly worshiping in many cases. I'm sorry, I've missed the great course, Dave. It seems
it's great.
But I know you've probably been talking about the, exactly the ways in which, AI and stuff is like God in many systems like Nick Land's. But anyway, that's the burden of it. I don't want to keep.
I have a follow-up for you on that. But first, we're going to go kind of in the order that people have been proposing that they'll want to ask questions, beginning with the big Signorelli himself. Andrew, you got a question for Russ.
Yeah. You can just call me Andrew here. What's up, Russ? Good to see you.
Hey, man. What's going on? Good to see you, too.
Yeah. So my question is, so your essays uses the superego. And so for me, it's like, and for like Nick, and maybe you can speak for Dave and Mikey, superego has always been a very interesting concept in psychoanalysis because there's no strict text on it. It's always kind of like referenced or stated, but it's always vague. Like, for instance, Seminar 1, Lacan will say that the superego misrecognizes the law, right? And then, and specifically, I think my question targets yours, like, when we look at like Žižek's, where they know not what they do, he says that in the totalitarian ideology, that the master signifier, the S1, is dislocated. And so the S2 preoccupies the discourse, which is kind of like, in a sense, a perverted one. So the superego injunction kind of rules that. And so my question is, in regards to Trump and your essay being the superego, would it be a sort of misrecognizing of the S1 of American capitalism? Or is it the fact that there is a dislocation or disillusion of the master signifier, and so therefore Trump becomes this like face for a superego injunction? And is it a one of, in at the same time, censorship and enjoyment, or pure obscene enjoyment?
That's a really good question. I would say it's the latter. That it's part of it is, and Slavoj talks about this a lot, but the disillusion or the failure of the paternal function of symbolic authority, and I think that when that happens, that's when you have a vacuum that father figures can come in and try to fill. At one point in the piece, I say Trump is very similar to Mr. Eddie, the character of Mr. Eddie from David Lynch's Lost Highway. He pulls, he's obscene, and yet his obscenity it's always tied to the law in a way, right? There's the famous scene in the movie where somebody's tailgating him, and he pulls the car over, and Mr. Eddie, if you haven't seen it, is played by Robert Loggia, and he's a big mob boss, and they force the guy off the road, the tailgater, and he gets out of the car, and his goons, and at gunpoint is like, 6 fucking car lengths, obey the fucking rules, right? And this it's something that you pointed to or you were touching upon toward the end of your question, was that the obscenity is sort of always like dialectically tied in as the obscene underside of the law, of the rule.
Right.
And so I don't want to get too far away from your original question, but I do think that it's obscenity. And what annoyed me so much about hearing, and in the piece, I should actually apologize for how many endnotes there are in it, but I have a link to like countless, okay, you can count them, but numerous pieces arguing that Trump, and this was on basically all sides of the political spectrum, that just this sort of pop psychology that Trump, although not necessarily just pop psychology, actually one of the pieces that I quote, that I cite, is by this historian, I think he's still at Columbia, but Eli Saretsky, who's written on Freud quite a bit. And I mean, now this is a more Lacanian approach that I'm taking, but even he, was that, Trump is the id, and the superego is, of course, the superego and the id are, as Freud argued, are inextricably linked in a way, right? But I think what's interesting here, to tie this into what some of other people have been talking about, is the way in which Trump, as the superego figure, the enjoyment, it's always tied to a figure of the other. And so that's the obscene underside of identity politics as well, is that it makes it about these others who have stolen your enjoyment. So I deploy the Jacques-Alain Miller's notion of the theft of enjoyment that Žižek teased out further in Tearing with the Negative. And so it's like the appeal of Trump and enjoyment depends precisely on identity politics. And this is why I know Nina was saying earlier, like the throwing around of terms like, fascist, just as a way of not having to engage or have dialogue with other people. But I really do think that identity politics, there at its core, is not just reactionary, but is open to that fascistic, not even hijack. I just think it's there. So now I know I've gotten pretty far away from your question, but yeah, I do think that it's the latter, that that's what you get. You get this sort of fake father, fake master figure when you have the decline of symbolic efficiency, or the decline of paternal, the father function, right?
Right.
Okay, so thanks. Sorry to cut in here, but we're gonna turn it over here to the next question in a second. I just wanted to say a couple of points of order. First of all, I've got like this EcoFlow thing. That's what it's called. It's like this backup battery reserve that the whole computer is being powered off of, and it's plugged into the wall. And I'm just saying that because this is the first time I've had that backup supply. The internet went out twice, or not the internet. The circuit broke on this outlet twice in the last 10 minutes, and so we're still here. We're still live. Everything's still working, and I just couldn't be happier. So in the past, things like that have happened, and it really threw a wrench in the operation. So we live, we learn. Negation is sublated. Blah blah blah, as we talked about earlier. Anyway, and so I just wanted to welcome Mikey here, and this is the time that I want Nance and Mikey to both say a few things about their pieces, because everybody else has had an opportunity to say what their piece was, what it was on, and so we'll go Nance then Mikey.
My name is Nance, and I wrote a little piece, and it was made up of several other reflections throughout the courses, the Idea of the University course and the PMC course. And I just kind of chopped up things that I had written for those courses and smushed it together into a decently legible essay. And it's in the book. So if you're interested in reading it, it's there. I don't really have anything spectacular to say, I think, but It's there.
Nance will never talk himself up, and so what I'll just say is that it is the 2023, front and center, like, featured student piece, because he's the only student who took like the first 5 courses consecutively, and that the work is ultimately something that comes out of those 5 courses. And so props, man, to having done all those courses, to that kind of synthetic work, and that, is like watching you find your voice and work on it, and not be like, oh, I found my voice, now I'm here, but also like realizing that it's like a lifelong process, and like seeing you commit to it is great. But at the level of like what it's about, though, dude, it's about being on the outside of the walls that are built by and for the professionals and managers of capital, which is how I frame it. My piece, well, I haven't talked about my piece, by the way. Hi, everyone, I'm Dave, and I actually have a piece in here too, and it is about the PMC. And in it, I say, my God, I already went into this with Elton today, so I don't want to, belabor the point. But if source of income or salary versus wages is not, important enough for a class distinction, if control versus ownership is not important enough for something to be actually like considered a class or whatever, if a person's salary being, and their retirement and their dividends and everything being largely like based in the ownership of capital as well, if all of that, if the prestige and the recognition and the what comes with the accolades of academia, if none of that like qualifies a person for being a member of a class, then fuck it, I don't give a shit about the term class. And that's why I say professionals and managers of capital. Let's move on. Okay, and so the piece does this whole like defense of not the concept or the acronym, but the phenomenon and its structural role in the reproduction of capital, and calls for radical responsibility on the part of people who have a position in that reproduction. But I think the part that I think, most important is discursive Taylorism, because I think that most of what we don't like about identity politics or cancel culture, blah, 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 the gatekeeping, the paternalistic, oh, follow me, and if you follow her, then fuck you, and the kind of bullshit that we saw like when the Underground Theory volume was not even published, but the draft of the cover was released, and everyone like went catatonic, and it went viral, and people started saying things on the back, such as, people who purchase this book should be barred from public life. Direct quote from Twitter. And I've just got a bunch of these quotes on the back here. These are the most dangerous thinkers on the internet. Engaging with them gives them credibility, so you are morally obligated to avoid this info hazard at all costs. Also, their graphic design is bad. They should have thought of that. That's like a famous theory blogger who studied under Mark Fisher and now gatekeeps his work. Everyone who
Let's not talk about this person. I think he's very unhappy person.
He's a very unhappy person. And actually, he made a post about how I'm unhappy and how he has fun with his friends at the pub. All right, it's just funny. But there's just a bunch of these. Everyone who when Acid Horizon said, everyone who dogpiled, ridiculed, and called for censorship of the Underground Theory book yesterday, good job. They must be stopped at all costs. Oh, I actually said a famous theory podcaster, but I didn't say Acid Horizon. So now you all know it was Acid Horizon. They fucking said that. Now I was paraphrasing it. So
like that's they put it out there. So
but it's primarily because of me, right? It's not really many of your other contributors.
That's you, and that's that's where I was going with my piece. To say my piece is about discursive Taylorism, which is the stay in your lane thing. It's that phenomenon. And so I say the PMC, most people, what people are talking about is downstream from Taylorism, moving into discursivity itself, which is to say specialists are the maintainers of lanes. You should follow them. Nina, you've not done a good job staying in your rightful lane or whatever. And so anybody who associates with you is bad. Yeah.
But you know what? Actually, I really have, because I'm a philosopher, So in fact, there is no lane in that sense, right? My entire orientation in being is this, absence of purpose, actually. if you want to think about it from the standpoint of a kind of insomniac, relation to thrownness or whatever. I mean, let's not put it in a Heideggerian sense, but honestly, I just can't stand a world in which people are unable to sort of be honest or whatever. It's not like I know anything. Like, that's the entire point. I don't know anything. I'm interested in the world and what people think. I'm interested in what the truth is. I'm interested in reality. I just get really upset when people are like, no, you can't you can't talk about this, or you can't say that, or whatever. I mean, and nothing I've ever wanted to say is horrible. I don't think, really. I can't go along with stuff.
None of us can, none of us will. We don't like, this is, yeah. And so Anne has a question for Nina. I'm really excited for that. I have a question for Nina. I also have a question for Samuel. I don't know if we'll be able to get to all of these questions because our time is running out. But Mikey, I had kind of interjected my own piece before you. And so, take it away. The floor is yours.
I'll just be brief. I just wanted to pop in here because I wanted to be on here with all of you. But I'm Michael Downs. I'm the author of the Dangerous Maybe blog. I am a teacher at Theory Underground. Taught 2 courses so far. The first one was on Žižek's For They Know Not What They Do. The second one that just finished was an introduction to Nick Land. And we got some more courses in the work. But the piece I wrote for the volume was called Wage Labor and Jouissance, Why the Left Needs Žižek to Understand Workers. And it really just comes out as of my experience as a wage laborer and seeing how Jouissance has organized my 2 primary workplaces. One was a barcade. I don't know if all of you know what that is, but in America, especially in the Midwest here, we were really the center of arcade culture in the 80s. And now there's all the nostalgia for the arcade because, the home consoles and online gaming destroyed the arcade. And so now what you've got are bars that are just filled with the old arcade machines like Pac-Man and Galaga, Mortal Kombat. And I was a bouncer at one of them. And so I talk about how Jouissance kind of circulated and functioned there. And then now I work in a warehouse, and I talk about warehouse Jouissance and all of that. And so it's basically applying Žižekian theory to my places of wage labor. And the point to me is that I think the left has to get off the high horse of moralism and understand that workers and work itself is structured around obscene forms of enjoyment, and that if you're going to go in and try to, or if you're going to try to appeal to workers, you're going to have to meet them where they're at and not hold them to some ideal of moral perfection. And if you do wield moralism against them, it's the surest way to lose them. And so it's that's basically where I'm coming from. I'm taking what I've learned from Žižek and applying it to the concrete dynamics of the workplaces I've been in.
All right. Well, in the last 15 minutes here, Samuel, I'm going to take the question I had for you and how the end of your piece sets up for an argument with the Landians and is a really good intervention in light of what I now know from the introduction to the Nick Land course. But let's curb that and maybe have a whole conversation in the future, or we'll write more about it. I hope that everyone's just sitting here thinking, oh, I want to write about that. Oh, I want to write about that. That's what this is supposed to do, not like a one-off conversation. You're all just getting to know each other, and hopefully some of you now have faces to go with names of people that you read in this volume. But with that, I want the women to talk for a minute. Marilyn just joined. She was the other editor of Underground Theory, and she's been around in my life via various philosophy groups and conferences and stuff like that for a long time. We stayed with her on the tour. It's great to have you, Marilyn. If you're too busy or like you're not able to actually join in right now, I just wanted to shout you out. And then Anne has a question for Nina. I had a question for Nina because I was going to be like, you talk about being a woman and that gets you in trouble, and you talk about like what it is and what men want and what women want. You do this whole thing, and so these spaces are traditionally super male. Like there's just a lot of dudes in these spaces. Then I'm talking philosophy first, politics second, and political philosophy third, and so I guess, I don't like to do that thing where it's like, oh my God, like the guys need to pay attention to how much they talk but at the same time, it's like, this is actually the most women we've had on a call like all year. So I wanted to set Anne up there to just ask you a question, and if Christine and you want to have a conversation in the future, I'd love to bring you both back on for a more rigorous conversation. I know the two of you will disagree on a lot when it comes to the question of what it is to be a woman. But Anne, the most important woman in my life, take it away.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a question directed for Nina, but Christine, if you have insights also, because I'm sure you both have just had more experience writing about and critiquing this current cultural moment that's going on. And I'm young, thinking about going back into the university, but I'm filled with, lately it's been a lot of like a frustration. Like I walk in, so for example, I went to a sociology presentation a couple weeks ago at my alma mater because one of the professors that I respect was giving a presentation. It was called like How Liberals Uphold White Supremacy, and it was kind of a clickbaity title. It actually wasn't really about that at all. It was more of a structural critique of professional managerial class. Anyways, though, I was in this space and I just I felt out of place because I'm a femininely presenting woman. My hair is its natural color. I don't have 10 piercings on my face. And I don't judge people for that. But I go into these spaces that are becoming more woke, and I just I feel so on edge. Towards the last couple of months of my degree, and I was in a research cohort, and we were doing rigorous, or at least supposed to be doing rigorous sociological research on the university, and some of my peers had their topics were around racism and racial divisions within the university. That's great and such. And then when we'd get to interviewing the students and we'd be analyzing the responses of the students rather than doing any sort of rigorous okay, but why did they say this thing? Oh, they said something that maybe was insensitive or dismissive of this current Black Lives Matter movement. It was just oh, well, because they're just racist. Look at us, we're doing sociology. It's just racism. And there wasn't actual any critique or understanding of what's going on. And I wanted to say something, but I'm scared to say anything right now. I feel out of place. I don't feel welcome in my sociology department because I feel like I just can't say maybe what's on a lot of people's minds. And so I guess I'm partly looking for just advice or what, because I know you've, Nina, had to deal with a lot, actual physical harm. And I think that's crazy and terrible. And so what keeps you going?
I mean, I don't know what to say. You can't be liked and believe in the truth at the same time. I mean, it matters more what you think, ultimately. I mean, if you care about the truth and beauty and justice, I mean, actually, I care more about truth and beauty than I do about justice, but they're all related. I mean, look, the horrible thing is actually, despite all of our socialization and whatever, it's I don't know, the older I get, it really matters more to me that I know what I think. Seriously. And I'm not an individualist. It's not like I think there is an I or anything, but but I can't worry. It's I think 10,000 things a day. If I was constantly worried about, the little other or the big other, I wouldn't pursue any thought particularly. And it doesn't matter. Like you have someone who loves you, you have intellectual quest, you know, you're a thoughtful person. I mean, it's kind of it. Like, if your life becomes smaller, like I lost like almost all of my friends when I got cancelled, and it was almost like it was a religious experience. Honestly, it was like I had to kind of reconstitute my entire value system, my life, my relationship to the sky, you know, the birds, whatever, like, you know, sort myself out. It was extraordinary, and I don't regret it, you know. And I think there is a kind of structure of feeling or thought or social relation which the existentialists are totally talking about, like, which is this kind of constant paranoia and fear of what the hypothetical other thinks, but the hypothetical other doesn't exist. I mean, like, it really doesn't. Like, you don't exist in a certain way. Like, you're not the other, right? You're not other. I mean, you're other to the other in a small sense, but you're not. Do you know what I mean? Like, there is no group of other people who are like sitting around going like, you know, what do I think about Anne? You know, like, and then there's just this kind of question of social etiquette or being or whatever. And it's like, yes, of course, we should all try to be pleasant and kind and thoughtful and treat each other as, like, you know, creatures of God, or, you know, fragments of existence, and so on and so forth, right? And I think the moment the implanted fear is that, like, once you break out of the social structure, oh my God, you're going to go crazy, and you're going to be so, like, I don't know, not at home in the world. But the opposite is true, actually. I think, like, fear is like fear eats the soul, like the Fassbinder film, you know. It really does. Like, I get messages, often private, like secret messages, people using anon email accounts messaging me saying, I can't be myself at work, I can't even tell you who I am, but, like, I'm so grateful you're sort of like being vaguely honest in public or whatever. And it's so awful. And it's like, I feel so sorry for people who are living dual lives, and this happens all the time. And I think we have to understand it anthropologically. This is a constant feature of human social life. This is why thinkers like Girard and Illich and Bataille and others are so important, because they actually really tell us the truth. You know, regardless of our technology, our specific modern moment, like, these are profound. We're the same people. Everyone is the same people, if you know what I mean, collectively and socially. So I don't know, just yeah, don't give up on your desire, right?
Can I?
Actually, Christine, so we've got 10 minutes before the next course reveal, because we're going to be revealing a course on Ivan Illich. And so, yes, I want you to take it away here, Christine, because you've got something fresh in mind to say, but kind of turn it into a closing thought. And then I want everyone else to hopefully have a minute to close out, like some kind of instead of like a goodbye, like a promise of like something that you'll be working on that might appear here or elsewhere that is somehow relevant or related to what we've talked about.
Yeah, well, there is nothing new about being censored or being attacked for your point of view. And I just found it really actually annoying when people acting as if it was something like unusual. I mean, in the past, I couldn't talk about racism. If I wanted to be a scientist, I could not talk about racism or women's rights. I would have lost my job. I would have lost my career. And so, and you can see through our history, this is the same. There is always this attack of individual's point of view or political point of view. I mean, there is nothing new. So the thing is that today people want to be liked. It's like we want to be part of the groups. If you cannot be part of the groups, then you feel isolated, and somehow you're going to be dying socially. And I have to say that I read somewhere something recently about self-sufficient individuals. I know that not everybody can be self-sufficient individuals, but there is a difference between the self-sufficient individuals and the individuals who are looking for belonging to a group. So you want to have many or you want to have many people around you who agree with you. And if it doesn't happen, then suddenly you're becoming... and the thing is that when you into or you change your point of view because you want to be part of a belonging, you're changing your point of view and you're becoming, what I'm trying to say is that the self-sufficient individuals, the one that who can say, this is my point of view, this is what is the truth, this is what I believe it in is, and despite the fact that people disagree with me, they are the ones who are going to be important. They are the ones that are going to be saying, I don't need people's approval to be able to try to look for the truth. And this is what we need. The fact that some people are going to attack you, there's nothing new about that. I mean, if you go into politics, if you go to the philosophy, if you go to anything important, you will have people going to be disagreeing with you. But this idea that we need to belong to something is what is problem. This is idea of identity. If you don't have an identity, if you don't belong to an identity group, suddenly we are nothing. This is not true. And we have to challenge that. I mean, I lost my friends. The friends that were supposedly for free speech, I mean, I've been with people for 30 years. 30 years they've been my friends. They all disappeared, most of them, because I changed my point of view on the idea, this is talking about spike people, because I changed my point of view on the issue of race or left and right. So, but I think it's important. This is why we need to challenge. The ideas is important, and we need to be. If we want to be able to change the world, we have to be able to go and promote and support our point of view and fight for our point of view, despite the fact that it's difficult to do it today. Anyway, maybe I'm a bit too excited.
No, thank you. And then the order will be Samuel, Philip, Nick, Andrew, Nance, Mikey, Marilyn. At any point, if she's done driving, would be able to interject herself. But then we are going to cut it off really hard and fast here in like 6 minutes. So, Samuel, take it away, man.
Hey, mainly I just want to apologize. I'm late. I've told Dave I've been sick since Saturday. I rarely actually am in bed sick, but it seems like something's been going around. So I'm grateful to meet everyone, and I'm looking forward to spending interact with you all more and to listen and learn more. I don't think I have any sort of great last thoughts, but I'm delighted by what Dave is doing, and that I get to be able to celebrate. So I think this conversation, even hearing just these last two remarks, is really inspiring for me. So I feel like my contribution is just the gift of gratitude for being able to be part of this. Thank you.
Yeah, this is giving me so many ideas. I'll try to condense them as best I can by saying what it's inspired me to think of, which is a way of grounding universality. And I was inspired by what Nina had to say about Greek theater and what Samuel had to say about us losing our working memory. I'm an actor, and I think that there might be something in this direction. Definitely having to learn Shakespeare, having to learn Roman and Greek tragedies will give you a familiarity with texts that I don't know if it puts you above average, but it makes you like learn words. So the idea is sort of like grounding your universality in what Gustav Mahler called Gesamtkunstwerk, which is a collective artwork. The idea being that the more people feel like they can contribute artistically to the creation of a new culture, the more this existential sense of not belonging will be curbed, opening up new lenses to see humanity all around us.
I think one of the main themes that connects all of our discussions today is universality, and it's a theme that I would like to build to in subsequent pieces. But next year, Andrew and I are going to be collaborating on a few pieces that we've been tossing around some ideas. So very inspired today, and yeah, look out for those. Those are in development.
Guessing it's my turn. So yeah, I mean, this is very great discussion. Good to see all of you on here. Those who haven't met, really great to meet you. And yeah, I just want to thank Dave for allowing me to publish this essay and to collab, especially not only never being in the university, but also being in the military and considering myself a sort of Marxist oriented person. One of the main things is, being censored, or the sort of like resentment from identity politics. Oh, you're in the military. Oh, you support imperialism. It's like, no, I'm a working class. I grew up in gang related families, so my only way out was by the predatory nature of recruitment. So with that being said, like being able to have this platform where I can't say if I belong, but I know I definitely grew up not belonging. So this ability just to speak and have this feeling of not belonging and lacking, but yet the desire to be able to express these ideas, and having, I think, the language that allows me to speak my unfreedom and feel more free. To take a line from Žižek when he talks about in his new work, how this factory worker was using Heidegger to express something new. And I feel like that's what psychoanalysis has given me, and to be able to express it with Dave, Mikey, and even Nick, it's allowed me to, I guess, feel more free. I don't know if I could say belonging, but at least in a sense where we could change our point of views without the fear of being castrated, or say like, oh, you're not part of us, you're wrong, and so get out. And at the same time, I think the question is, what is universality, or what is a worldview? So
and just a reminder for everybody, this is people in the future, this is people here right now. None of you belong. The internet was created by the CIA. Like, this is not our community. This is not a place for radical things. This is not a place to be yourself. This is not none of that. And so really it is a place for non-belonging, and that's been on the front top of the app when you load it. It says that. It says don't be yourself, or like not at least not too much, right? Like anyway, and so Andrew, I feel the same way. Like, yeah, I don't belong anywhere. I don't think any of you do. But we're also not just like this island of misfit rejects who are like, oh yeah, we don't belong anywhere. No, we're trying to understand the world. We're engaging with each other. And none of us we're all coming at this from different kind of places. And Brian just joined the chat. He's going to be the next one up. We're going to be talking about the course he'll be teaching on Ivan Illich. Nina teaches on Illich as well. We'd love to have you back someday, Nina, for a special on that. But for right now, who's next? Brian, we're closing out this session.
I'll go real quick. Shout out Poverty Draft, Andrew. Currently, I'm doing like a super deep dive on Marx. And I have my own ideas about value and waste and consumption and stuff like that. And I'm hoping eventually I'll be able to kind of flesh those out. And we're also doing a deep dive on Lumen for the critical media theory cohort. And I'm looking forward to engaging with that and like thinking about human futures and how do we secure a human future for us. Yeah, looking forward to everybody's contributions. I really do like how there's a lot of crosstalk and a lot of back and forth between everybody.
So I guess what's on the near horizon is I've got two pretty long blog posts that I'm hoping to have out within the next month or so. That's a running joke at this point with Dave and I. It'll be done soon. Yeah. But I'm just trying to get some of those done, and hopefully having my first book out sometime next year, while I'm also working on my main book that I've been doing the research on for 5+ years now. So, and then teaching courses at Theory Underground as we plan them and as we have time to do them. And so just that, and happy birthday, Dave. And great to be here with all of you.
Mikey, I'm just totally delighted that you were able to pop in for this. Everybody, look, the Young Žižekians, aka Mikey, Nick, Andrew, myself, like it's our side band. We're all going to be, or it's our Wu-Tang Clan, according to Andrew. But no, we're all going to be joining the Theory Underground Film Club to talk about AI and human futures as the sort of culminating event tonight. So hope you can all come back if you've got to dip out at some point. I know like where Nina is and Christine as well, like it's pretty late. I mean, it's getting late on the East Coast. I just saw you yawning there, Andrew. Is there anybody remaining? Everybody said their piece, right? Everybody said goodbye? Well then, what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll the PSA because Brian, you're all about to hear from him anyway. His piece in there is more of a creative writing approach, which is more of his academic background, but it's also he's always felt called to sort of mythologize our times. And in a sort of sense, he's doing it for the movement of underground theory or the emerging thing that is underground theory. And so if you want to check that out, go check out the work. But with that, I'm going to roll the shorter version of the PSA. This will be the first time that I played the shorter version today. It's only 3 minutes and 30 seconds. We'll be right back after this. Is it going to go? There we go.
We cannot do direct revolution, but the only way to lay the foundation for it is to do what you are doing to move the underground. It's a theoretically correct title.
Welcome to Theory Underground, where workers with earbuds can find genuine liberation from necessity.
Research at Theory Underground focuses on what is most important for understanding our current situation. Theory of the subject, capital, time-energy theory, critical media theory, CMT, and the most essential critiques necessary for understanding why the theory, ideology, and common sense of influencers left to right misses the mark.
Theory Underground is a publishing house as well as lecture course and social media platform.
You've been reading Underground Theory.
Yes.
And
amazing book. I'm a publisher and an editor. I run and review of books. Literally, it's my living. This is the best edited collection I've ever read.
Jesus Christ.
Seriously.
This is a little experiment in what I, David McKerracher, can pull off without relying on the academy or the algorithmic dictates of the attention economy. I believe that I am, like so many others, pioneering a future in which educators can form learning webs that will make learning as a way of life enjoyable and emancipatory. However, before these tools become accessible, they have to be experimented with. That's why I built my own website and app using nothing more than my own saved wages, 5 patrons, and some small classes of students over the last year. Of course, I also have had my wife Anne's moral support and help with accounting so that I don't get in trouble with the IRS or whatever. In less than a year, Theory Underground has already put out 8 courses, 2 books, one, my book, Timenergy, and the other, Underground Theory, which has over 30 contributors, including works written by students at Theory Underground, some of my fellow travelers, and colleagues in the broader universe of underground theory. Beyond the books and courses, though, you will also find interviews, reading exegetical reaction sessions, and live weekly events for working class autodidacts, independent researchers, and renegade academics. These include a variety of clubs and cohorts that meet on a weekly or monthly basis. If you want to get involved, there are 4 main subscription levels.
Think of it like a gym membership, but for your mind.
The point is to make learning, practice, and theoretical comprehension a way of life. If I can triple my subscribers in the next 2 months, I can quit my gig at Amazon and focus on this work full time. All I need is a few more people at each of the levels, or a couple big-time patrons who just want to see it happen. Right now I am doing a patron and site subscriber drive, so excuse the commercial. But if you end up really liking what goes on at this channel, consider signing up soon. I hope that you either will or have enjoyed the program, and also make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and leave this playing in the background all the time while you're doing other things.
Playing long-form Theory Underground content in the background while you do things has, in the near future, been scientifically proven to emancipate minds from the functional illiteracy imposed on workers by the structural stultification of time energy. This is achieved by reterritorializing circumspective concern.
Also, to some degree, it is for the algorithm. And we're back. What's up, everybody? I'm going to go ahead and hide the non-participants here, and then